Welcome to the word level introduction session for our Teaching at the Right Level Namibia refresher training for literacy. So just as a reminder, these are our objectives or what we're trying to do in terms of developing children's literacy as we go from beginner and letter level to now word and then to paragraph and story. And so we're focusing on in this video, simple words, going from children who are able to read simple words up to being able to read paragraphs. And you see there's two steps in the middle there. The first step is alternative spellings. This is very unique to the English language, in which one sound, the same sound, can be spelled in many, many different ways, in some cases 6 different ways. And so for you to be able to read enough words to go from reading simple words to paragraphs and to read enough words fluently, you need to know these alternative spellings so that you're able to decode or sound out words that have those spellings. Complex words is the next step. Those are compound words or long words, which require you to use those basic skills of decoding and blending syllables and sounds of letters together to read words, but just more of it, right? And so, in a simple word, the simple word might be import, and the complex word might be important, right? Which requires you to blend a lot more sounds together. So for you to be able to go from simple words to reading paragraphs, you need to be able to read enough words fluently enough to read a whole paragraph, which means you have to know words that have alternative spellings and long, complex words. So let's just talk a little bit more about alternative spellings. This is a very new concept for many people, and something that you probably didn't notice, right? I surely didn't notice when I first started teaching how to read, teaching children how to read. And so here we have an example of alternative spellings. And the question I'll ask you is, looking at all those spellings in blue, what is the sound that those spellings are making? Rain, acorn, play, snake, ate, gray. What is the sound that all those different spellings are making? Well, the sound they're making is the sound A. It's actually all A. Rain, acorn, play, snake, ate, gray, right? Those are all spelling the sound A. So those are many different ways to spell that. So you can imagine a world in which a child has never seen EIGH, for example, spelling the sound A. And so they read it based on the letter sounds. They might read gut, gut. That's not 8, right? So this is an alternative spelling that you have to be aware of to be able to read this word. And that's the most difficult one, right? Because that's 4 letters making one sound. So it's quite difficult. And if you don't know alternative spellings, you're not able to read these words fluently. You're going to pause during the TaRL leveling assessment, and you might even just skip those words entirely, right? And these are also not complex words. They're not long, right? These are very short and simple words, everyday words that you have to know the alternative spelling for. So here's our sound spelling chart. And basically what you see on the sound spelling chart are all the normal 40 sounds that were on the ABC action chart. And then underneath them, different ways to spell those sounds. So for example, the sound B in ball can be spelled with 1 B. It can be spelled with 2 B's. And it could also be spelled with a B and an E, like bubble. Bubble has 2 B's, making still the same 1 B sound. So it's quite simple, right? I think if you think about the word click, click is spelled C-L-I-C-K. The last K is spelled with a C and a K. It's not click, right? It's click. So all of these are different ways to spell the same sound. And what you'll notice here is that there's some sounds that have 1 or 2 or even just one way to spell it. And then there are other sounds with a lot of ways to spell it. And you'll notice exactly which sounds those are. Those are the long vowels. Long vowels are notoriously hard because there's a million different ways, right, to spell them. So how do you use the sound chart? Well, that same picture I showed you before of the acorn and play and all those different things, you can see those sounds right here on our alternative spelling chart. All the 6 different ways that you can spell the sound A. And you'll also see at the back of your TaRL manual words that give you an example of when this is happening, right? And you can start to see some patterns. For example, AI spells the sound A usually at the beginning or in the middle of a word, versus AY is usually used to spell the sound A when A comes at the end of a word, like today or spray or way, right? You're not going to spell that W-A-I to spell way. You're going to spell it W-A-Y. And you'll also see one of our most famous and wonderful patterns in English, which is magic silent E. And that is where you have a vowel and then a consonant, a non-vowel in the middle, and then an E at the end of the word. And the E is silent, and the vowel becomes a long vowel where it says its own name. It says A instead of A, right? In this case. So there are the sounds spellings are on the alternative spelling chart. You also have some phonics songs that are able to help you to teach the children and allow them to remember all these different patterns in English. And so even though there's a ton of different spellings and it can feel very overwhelming, there are actually only a few phonics rules to learn, just 4 or 5 rules, right, that kind of tell you what's going on here. The first rule is that vowels can make their short sound and their long sound. The short sound is a, I, a, and the long sound is the letter's name, A, E, I, O, and U. The next thing that you'll be able to talk to them about is, again, that magic E, right? Where it can turn a short vowel into a long vowel. So for example, if you had the word at, a, and t, the A is saying ah, which is its short sound. If you add an E at the end, A-T-E, then you will get eight, eight. So the A is no longer saying its A sound, it's saying its name. It's saying the A sound. And there's a little song to help you remember it, where you say, you know, E makes a vowel say its name when it plays the jumping game. You don't have to sing it. You can even just say it over and over again as like a little rhyme. And the last thing is digraphs. Digraphs is a very technical term, but which is not necessarily necessary for the learners to know, but the concept is very important, which is that there are 2 letters that can make one sound. And you sing it in a cute little way. 2 letters that make one sound, make one sound, make one sound, right? It's just to get them to understand this concept that there's going to be, when you see 2 letters together, they form a little team and they make one sound. So why are we teaching all of this? Is this really useful? And isn't this super confusing, right? And you might have experienced this yourself while you were teaching. Wouldn't it be just easier to show whole words or to ignore this, right, and get on with reading or grammar or something else? Well, it's really, really important because alternative spellings are actually incredibly frequent in English as a language. Very high frequency words, words that are used all the time, have these spellings, such as the word does. If you tried to read that with just your normal understanding of letter sound, you would read D-A-S, D-A-S. Well, that doesn't sound right. It's does, right? And so you have to know that the O and the E can sometimes make this sound The same is true for that number 8, right? Again, E-I-G-H is somehow making one sound A, and the last sound being t, 8. Right? So is this confusing? Well, the short answer is yes, it's extremely confusing. This is why it's hard to learn to read, and especially hard to read the language of English, right? But if you don't teach it, that doesn't make English any less confusing. These alternative spellings and these phonics rules, they're not going away just because we don't teach them to the learners. In fact, these are the things that are going to trip up learners for a very long time. They're not going to figure it out on their own. Some children do. Actually, lots of children do. But studies have shown between 30 and 40% of children need to be explicitly or directly taught these rules, and they will not pick up on the patterns just from reading lots of text on their own. So, for example, how does a child who only knows the letter sounds read this word? Just think about it for yourself. How would you sound that out just knowing the letter sounds that we normally know from the ABC action chart? You would say s, eh, l. Nope. No, you wouldn't, right? You know that because you know English, right? What you would really say is l, l, to l, to L if you were blending that together, right? Which we all know is not the truth. So the C is making an S sound and the double L is making one L sound to make the word sell. And so alternative spellings are just a way for you to explain that to children instead of just telling them no. If a child just read L and you say, no, that's not the right way you say that, how are you explaining to that child why it's wrong? Well, you could use alternative spellings to explain it. How does a child who only knows their letter sound spell this word? What's that? It's a phone. How would a child spell phone? Well, they're probably going to spell it like this, right? Phone. So without alternative spellings, they're going to mess that up, right? They're not going to spell that in the correct way. So again, we're going from simple words that just use their normal sounds from the ABC action chart to alternative words, which are words that have one sound and many spellings, or one spelling and many different sounds, such as the sounds that OW make. OW can make ow. It can also make sh, oh, right? So you want them to be aware of these things that are happening in English. You also want them to be able to have some practice blending longer words like investment and highlight and explanation, things that come up quite often. And then they can read paras. They can read paras that have these words, right? Paragraphs that have these special sounds and these longer words. So I'm going to give you a couple of more examples. Let's say you're reading a paragraph and they don't know how to read these words in red. What do? Do you just repeat the whole words? No, you use the alternative spelling charts to help learners to decode these unknown words. So for example, let's say we have the word tail. We'll start with the first one. You would explain the magic E rule, that E is a vowel that makes a letter say its own name. And then you'd show them on the chart. Here's the LE, just making one sound. So it's T-A-L, tail, right? Here we have the word gym, right? It's not making its normal sound. It's not going g-y-m, g-yim. Nope, it's going j. So the G is making a J sound. The Y is making an I sound, and M, gym. Same is true for photo, right? The PH is making the f sound, and that's a digraph, right? So it's very helpful to sing the little song. This is the digraph song. We're gonna sing the song so that you understand that photo is actually, the PH is a digraph, making one sound. The same is true for no, right? Here we have the KN is just making one sound of n, and in friend, right? The IE is just making an eh sound, so it's just going end. So use the storybooks, practice, practice, practice. Read as many paras and stories as possible. This will build up their ability to decode these more complicated words. The only way to learn how to read, is to practice reading. You start with these very simple paras, the ABC paras, and then you go to more and more complex and longer paras. So here we have a case study of Trudy. Trudy has 34 word level students in her class. What would the first 10 days kind of look like if she had to plan it out in her mind? So first, she'd go to her objectives. She knows she's going to start with the A to Z sound spellings, then she'll go to long vowels, and then she'll go to special sounds. And she's constantly trying to teach them how to decode or sound out words that are both using these alternative spellings and have compound or longer words within them. So that just looks like, A to Z, and then the long vowels, and then the special sounds. So here we have, she introduces the chart. She introduces this concept of alternative spellings. The whole chart, she sees which letters they find challenging, and then she addresses those letters, then she moves on. She does the special sounds. She introduces these different phonics songs where they can learn about magic E and vowel teams and all these things. And then she teaches those things as they are needed to the learners. Then she'll review everything, make sure that they can decode and blend all those sounds together. And then finally, they exit. And so the activity is for you to read this story and identify all of the special sounds and alternative sounds that are there. Ask yourself, is this the normal sound that this letter makes? And is there a silent sound or a letter combination making one sound? All right.